Hello, it's me, Ariza Gaming, and welcome back to another episode of Sandbox Showcase, the series where I talk about problems in Oxygen Not Included and how you can solve them easily and efficiently. And today, we're talking about the Pacu. That's right, our fish-themed channel is finally talking about fish in Oxygen Not Included. Can you believe it? So, we put this off for a while, mostly because Pacu have received a lot of updates fairly recently over the last few years. They've changed how their happiness works, and in particular, they've changed in the Prehistoric Planet Pack DLC. They've added a lot of new content for these guys that we're going to talk about in future videos. But this video is going to be the first in a series of 4, where we're going to talk about the basics of Pacu ranching, why you might want to breed Pacus, how you can do it in a space-efficient and dupe-efficient manner, and what the pros and cons are of the little guys. So, first of all, why would you bother actually ranching Pacu? Well, they are a pretty good food source that doesn't require a lot of actual input food. Each Pacu, when they die, drops 1 kilogram of Pacu fillet, which can be cooked into 1,600 calories of cooked seafood. These guys only live for 25 cycles, and they breed very rapidly. So you can get a lot of seafood out of these guys, and seafood is particularly good food because it gives your duplicates a radiation-resistant buff. So very useful if they're going into space or handling nuclear fuel or anything like that. And Pacu are probably one of the easiest ways to get that seafood buff. You can combine the cooked seafood with barbecue to get surf and turf as well, which is a relatively easy, high-quality food for maximum morale for your duplicants. And the other thing is, the eggs are very large. Each egg is 4 kilograms, so that can be crushed into a fairly large amount of lime in the rock crusher, especially considering how quickly they reproduce. Large eggs frequently made means lots and lots of lime, easily grabbed for your duplicates to make steel with. But you also actually get 3,200 calories of raw egg from cracking them, and you can cook this into omelette. And the funny thing is, you don't actually even necessarily need a grill to cook the omelettes. All you need to do is have them in a liquid or a medium that's hot enough, and above 75 degrees C will do. And once the raw egg hits that point, it will actually state change into an omelette. So it's actually completely automated food production, potentially. So it's going to save your duplicates cooking time. It means you don't necessarily need the grilling skill to get that meat unlocked, that food unlocked. So relatively straightforward. And then the actual input foods aren't too bad. We're only going to talk about the base game today, but if we have a look in here. So to actually feed these guys, you can feed them 7.5 kilograms per cycle of algae. They poop out 50% of the mass as polluted dirt, which can be useful for some things, but we're not really going to focus on it today. This algae consumption per Pacu has decreased dramatically since the original versions of the game. So relatively easy to get this much algae now. You can find it in your jungle biomes, your terra biomes, your marshy and swampy biomes. Places where you often find the Pacu will have some algae in them. But if you're planning on feeding these guys with algae long term, you're probably actually going to want to sort out some algae distillation. You feed the fish with the fish feeder to tame them instead of having a grooming station. We'll talk about later, but to actually fill these with algae, either you're digging it off the map or you're using polluted water. Now, one thing about polluted water is it will off-gas at 100% efficiency over time into polluted oxygen. The wider the area of polluted water to off-gas, the more polluted oxygen you're going to get. And that polluted oxygen can actually get converted into 95% slime using, no, not an egg, a puft. Pufts will convert into 95% slime. And then you can actually build an algae distiller, which is this building here. And this will convert 3 parts slime into 1 part algae and 2 parts polluted water. So you can continue to recycle the polluted water with the puft. And eventually you can convert most of the polluted water, almost all of it, into algae, which these guys can eat. And because you can get polluted water from vents, it's relatively trivial to get enough algae to feed these guys now. It used to be very expensive, but now it actually makes sense to have a large breeder population fed off of algae. The other thing that you can actually feed them with is seeds. So if we have a look in here, you can actually see we can select sleet wheat grain as an option to feed them with. And some plants are better than others for feeding them seeds. A Pacu will eat most seeds. There's a couple of seeds that they won't eat, which could be, it's sort of like plants you don't necessarily want them to eat the seeds of. But What you want for this is, if you're farming plants that grow very quickly anyways, such as mealwoods, or if you have the DLCs, sweat corns, or pike apples, those seeds get produced quickly. If you have a farmer with a high attribute in agriculture, then they will produce a seed guaranteed with every harvest. And it's very easy to feed a large number of Pacu with a small amount of plant farming. Thimblereeds are also great for this. They consume a lot of polluted water, but you're converting it into reed fiber, and you happen to get loads of seeds out of them anyways, because they grow every 3 cycles. And you can use fertilizer to speed this up even more. But as mentioned previously, sleet wheats and nosh beans are also a potentially viable option if you're growing them in your base anyways for high-tier foods. Each plant will actually produce a very large number of seeds per harvest, because the seed is the food in this case. So you can actually feed a large number of Pacu for a relatively small number of plants. And this is actually particularly relevant if you're wild planting these, because the wild planted plants, even without being harvested by a duplicant, you will eventually get the sleet wheats to feed them. Likewise, if you have a map with large frozen biomes that happen to have a lot of natural sleet wheats in them, and you don't necessarily need them for food, you can just harvest them off the map and breed a small number of Pacus just off of the wild sleet wheats if you get them in a sterile atmosphere and, you know, sort them out. So, yeah, feeding these guys isn't too challenging these days, and they can provide a lot of food, they can provide a lot of lime. Those are the main things we're going to be talking about today. And there are several different builds for handling Pacu. I would really recommend watching Luma Plays' video to get an overview of all of the different types of setup that you can use to handle Pacu. We're going to go with a modification of their pressure plate variant. We're going to use a pressure plate to separate out eggs that we do want to keep in the ranch from eggs that we don't want to keep in the ranch. But we're going to design the setup so that it fits in a relatively neat area that aligns with our typical sort of base dimensions. That's a key priority for me. You know me, getting obsessed about all of that. So let's let some material out down here. And then let's just put on normal sort of axis shaft just so you can see what we're going for. Right, we're going to put some doors up here. So, first of all, what am I talking about with my 23 wide base? Is there a particular reason for doing this with Pacu? Not really. But it's more that I generally like to build my base with floors of this size because you can subdivide it very easily into different room sizes, depending on what you want to do. So 23 divided by 2, you get 2 11-size rooms. If you divide it by 3, then you can actually end up with 3 7-size rooms. And if you divide it by 4, you can end up with 4 5-size rooms. So it's a really nice number for actually subdividing up. And we're going to show you that you can actually fit it into this normal 4-high, 23-wide base structure as well. So that's one of the key modifications I've made. The other one we've also made is just to make it a bit more space efficient in general. But again, there's nothing really wrong with the original build. Absolutely go for that one on the Luma Plays video. But I wanted to show my own take on it. I think it's worth seeing. We have actually built something like this on Twitch. So feel free to check out the Twitch stream and you'll see more Pacu shenanigans. We're getting more confident with them now after all of the changes. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to have 3 different rooms. We're going to have the chamber where the Pacu are actually getting sorted out. So it's going to sort, like, the eggs are going to drop in and then they're going to go into the tanks. And then we're going to have the tanks as separate rooms. So our tank shape is going to be a little bit weird. It's actually going to come down here a little bit. Is that right? Yes, it is. Okay. So we have to put in fish feeder here. Fish feeder is very important. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But yeah, this tank, we're going to want to fill it with water. In this case, it's 18 tiles. Each Pacu likes to have 8 tiles of space. And they're kind of funny about what they consider space. Because, I mean, for instance, let's just set up 2 of these rooms next to each other. So we're actually going to do it like this. And then what we'll do is we'll just put in a couple of mesh tiles. I'll explain all of this in a minute. But another fish feeder is going to go over here, and another door is going to go over here. So, we have 2 different tanks. The shape of the tank generally doesn't matter too much. The Pacu is a 1x1 creature. All it needs to do is be able to reach the Pacu, the fish feeder, and then a water fort that we're going to put down here in a minute. But these 2 bodies of water are both considered 18 tiles. If we filled up these mesh tiles with water, then it would be considered 20 tiles, even though the Pacu can't access these mesh tiles. Similarly, if you have, say, pneumatic doors, the fish could go in the doors and they won't get confined like other critters do. So that's a little bit of a weird wrinkle. But the long and short of it is, if we actually separated them out like this, and we had them all in this body of water, they would consider the whole body of water for crampedness purposes. So that's not really what we want. We want to make sure that the individual tanks are actually separated off so that we can maximize how many Pacu we can fit in the area. We're going to maximize how many Pacu can fit in this area by adding the waterfalls. So you need a little bit of plastic to make this. But essentially, it's just like the critter condo, but for fish. And instead of reed fiber, it's plastic. So because each Pacu wants 8 tiles, what you'll actually end up with is... You can fit... Oh, not the puffed. You can actually fit 3 Pacu per tank. And the building is contributing 50% of that. So the reason we've got lots of small tanks in this case, and that's why we're going to do that approach in general, is so that we can actually have as many fish per square inch as possible. So that's roughly what our tank setup is going to look like. We're going to add loads of automation and stuff in a minute. But yeah, let's actually have a look at the actual layout as well, because the actual mechanism by which we're sorting out the eggs is pretty important. I like to put some ladders here just so that I can climb in and out of this area without any issues. But this weight plate is very important. We're going to drop the Pacu eggs out of a chute here, and they're going to rest on this. And this is going to count how many eggs drop. We're going to make sure the duplicants aren't dropping anything on this, and there's going to be an auto sweeper that we actually put here that is going to pick up any non-egg material and remove it from the weight plate. So because we want 3 Pacu per tank, we're going to fit 4 tanks into space, so we're going to set this to 48 kilograms. It sends a green signal if it's below 48 kilograms. And then we'll have a go at tweaking that in a minute. We'll sort out the automation in a minute. But what else are we going to do? We're going to put in a conveyor rail element sensor. You do need to do the radiation research to get the conveyor rail sensors. So a little bit of advanced research, not too much. And then we're going to put some more doors in. So we're going to put mechanized airlocks here and here. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to set it up so that we have 2 different pools of water. This one's going to be separated from this one by an airflow tile, not a mesh tile. We're putting airflow tiles in so that when you fill these rooms up with water from, say, a vent or a bottle emptier, there is room to actually put a vent in some of these. If you're filling these rooms up with water, you want the gases to be able to escape when you're building it. So that's why we've got this airflow tile. But yeah, essentially, the fish eggs are going to drop here. And if either of these tanks needs to be filled, then these 2 doors will open, and the fish will flop towards the nearest body of water, which is to the right, and then it's just going to fall in here, and then once this room is full of 3 guys, which we're going to use a critter sensor for, then the door is going to shut, just the bottom door. This door will stay open. And then the next fish will flop over to the next tank, and again, this will fill up until it gets 3 fish in it. And then that door will close, and so on and so forth, until we actually get to the end of the setup. At which point, once all of the tanks are full, this door will close, and this door will open. And then all the spare fish are going to end up in here, where they're going to sit and eventually get turned into Pacu fillet. So we're going to put a conveyor loader in here as well. Now, the reason I put a little gap in here is because we're actually going to be a little bit naughty. We're going to put an auto sweeper in here as well. So what we can do is we can just remove these 3 ladders. Because of how the tanks are set up, you can actually have your dupe wander into the gap. This doesn't impede access at all. It looks a little bit weird. It will slow them down a little bit, admittedly, but I think it's worth it. Because otherwise you'd have to put the auto sweeper here. But essentially, what you'll notice is this auto sweeper has coverage over this weight plate where the eggs are. And when this door opens, it won't be able to reach this because of the tile here. So any excess eggs over here aren't going to get swept up into the system. And then this auto sweeper, conversely, can only reach this loader and these tiles down here. So then it's going to send all of our food and extra bits from the Pacu, like polluted dirt, over to wherever we want to distribute it to. Also, I was totally kidding. We can totally put a vent here. So you can just fill these rooms up with vents. You can also build ice temperature plates. Just bear in mind that Pacu like it to be between 0 and 60 degrees C. And if the water's on the hot end, you're going to end up with tropical Pacus. And if the water's on the cold end, you're going to end up with gulpfish. And gulpfish prefer it colder, and tropical Pacus prefer it hotter. We're going to talk about them more in another video. But basically, what you're going to want to do, if we look at the egg chances here, you're going to want to keep the temperature between 5 and 35 degrees C to make sure that you're getting mostly Pacu. This is actually important because Pacu spawn with a high mass. They weigh 200 kilograms each. A bit weird you only get 1 kilogram of fillet out of them when they die. But they have a lot of mass and they spawn at a fixed temperature. These ones you can see have spawned at 30 degrees C because they're a Pacu. So, we'll talk about this more in a separate video, but basically, if you end up with a large amount of the other Pacu variants, they're going to heat up or cool down your base, respectively, if they're all ending up in here. So aim for between 5 and 35 degrees C for this whole area. Build ice temperature plates to get this in, but just make sure it's not kept too cold in general, and you'll be alright. So let's build a couple more buildings. There's not actually that much more left to build in here. Let's actually just fill up this room. So we're going to put an auto sweeper in here. Now, a funny quirk, because of the diagonal tile here, this auto sweeper can actually reach into the other room. That doesn't matter here. It will matter in a minute when we get to the end of our setup. But we'll put auto sweepers in here. These have coverage over the whole floor, so any Pacu eggs that get laid, any polluted dirt that gets laid by the fish after feeding will get picked up. We're also going to put some conveyor receptacles in here. This is where we're going to dump all of the algae and all of the seeds. What we can actually do is we can just have a conveyor loader here that we fill specifically with the food, and then we can just sort of conveyor it down here to connect into these. Then, of course, we're going to need to put the loaders in because we need to get the eggs out, so they're going to go underneath. And the eggs are just going to run through these columns of tiles here, and then they're going to wrap their way around here. We'll do more stuff about Mechatronics in a later part of this video. But I'm just showing you where all the buildings are going. And then, of course, we have the critter sensors, which we're going to use to open the doors. And that's it. You'll notice a bit of a conspicuous gap going on here as well. We can actually, totally, this is a key improvement over the Luma Plays build. You can put a surfboard on these mesh tiles, and that's very important. And you actually have room to put in a little mini liquid pump. Again, you just need a bit of plastic for this. This doesn't require that much water. I know this uses more power than a regular liquid pump, but this way you can actually just make sure that you're dumping the water back into the tank where it's filling. But there you go. Like, you've got a place to fit your surfboards, get some extra easy morale for your dupes, watch them surf. It's all good. But that's basically it. So now all we need to actually do is extend this over here. And the good thing about this build is it's completely modular. We're going to extend it over 4 wide, but you can make it as wide as you want. The only catch is the Pacu has to flop its way over to the gap. So the longer the setup, the more flopping time the Pacu is going to have. It will get where it's going eventually, but it will take a little bit of time. But then again, it can't start breeding until it's an adult anyways, until it's 5 cycles old. So you're not really going to lose that much egg production or meat production from the Pacu. So it's not actually a huge problem having a really wide row like this. But we're just going to do it 4 wide today. Something else I'd recommend later on. It doesn't matter here. Generally, I would recommend building this out of a material with high pressure damage resistance. Granite is the best. So we're actually we're gonna replace all of this with granite. Whatever. There you go. It's not very time consuming, is it? Granite is a very pressure resistant common material. Generally, you want to make liquid tanks out of it just in case you get a high liquid pressure spike for some reason. That'll be relevant in a future video where we talk about gobfish. But for now, it's not overly relevant. And yeah, as you can see, because of the special shape, we can fit a 4th tank over here. And there's a little bit of space over here that we're going to use for something else, just for this 23 wide setup. But it's not mandatory at all to have it this width. I just like building things that width in general. So we'll put that in here, put the loader in there, and that's mostly the room done now. So we've got a little bit of space at the end. So what we're actually going to do... is we're going to make these airflow tiles as well. Just going to connect them up. Then we're actually going to put some insulated tile in. This is where we're going to put in our omelette cooking solution. We're going to make this out of igneous rock. You've got enough room to actually fit the tepidizer in down here. Ah, I see what I've done wrong. You just do it like this. So yeah, you have enough room to fit the tepidizer down here in this little 4-wide block. We're just going to fill that with a bit of water. And then that's how you're going to get your eggs made. You don't have to do anything super special with this room. This is just the zone that I'm going to insulate for now. Completely surrounded by tiles. We won't actually have any gases in here. So this really shouldn't heat up at all. You shouldn't get any real major heat leak from your tepidizer. And then last but not least, we're just going to put some more tiles over here. We're going to put in a door. And there you go. Just for good measure. And then we're going to put a little blob of water over here. So the purpose of this blob of water, if you have a lot of Pacu in your actual setup, if you have loads of breeders and it's a long row, you may end up in some situations where a Pacu is flopping at the end of the queue. It's going to be the last Pacu to drop in the tank, and then this door's going to close. You might still have a couple of Pacu en route if you've got enough of the breeding. This pool will just make sure they get attracted to something at the end, and they're not just flopping around on the surface endlessly, causing annoyance. We want to keep all the excess Pacu in these single tiles to reduce lag. And to make it so we can pick up all the food and products and put that there. But yeah, this room, we're just going to fill this with a little bit of water as well. We're going to fill the bottom 2 tiles with water. And you want to get a nice, good coverage layer in there, so we can put the liquid tepidizer. Doesn't matter too much what machine we put in here. It overheats at 125°C, regardless of what it's made out of. So any material will do. And then we're going to put a few conveyor things in here. We're going to hook this all up in a separate section. So we're going to put a conveyor loader. That's going to be for extracting the omelettes. The conveyor receptacle is where the excess eggs are going to get stored. And then if we actually get the shut-off, we're going to put that in here as well. Fun fact, conveyor shut-offs can't overheat. Not that that's a problem here, but I just thought you should know. And then we're going to put another conveyor element sensor in here. Not 100% needed for this build, but we're going to keep it here because this build is going to form the basis of a few different Pacu theme builds we're going to talk about in the series of videos coming up. But yeah, and then we'll just put a little chute over here. And yeah, that's basically it. We'll just put a chute in here as well. So that's the overview of what it looks like. Just a little bit of an egg management over here. The fish feeders over here. The auto sweepers can reach the receptacle and they can reach this tile with the fish on it. That's the important one. When you're grabbing the Pacu, you can literally just tell your duplicant to relocate them to a pool of water. Yes, you can build fish traps if you want. You can build... One thing I would say about fish traps, they're pretty useless, but you can build them... You see this little dangler hanging off it? You can build them so they're suspended above a body of liquid in case you don't want to get your dupes in a body of liquid, in case you've got bionic dupes. That is occasionally relevant. But otherwise, just get a dupe with ranching skill, get them to relocate the fish manually to the ponds, and job's a good one. So, let's talk about actually taming these guys. So, to actually get tamed, they start off wild. Wildness 100% increases by 5% per cycle. You want to feed them from the fish feeder. If they don't eat from the fish feeder, if you just drop the food in the tank, they aren't going to get tamed. And you need them to be tamed to get them to actually breed. A wild Pacu will self-sustain. It will lay 1 egg over its lifetime. But we can do a lot better than that. But the key is, they have to eat from the feeder often to make sure that they keep getting the buff so that it doesn't expire. Because the buff only applies a small bonus to taming. It's still going to take at least, like, probably 6 or 7 cycles to actually tame a fish eating continuously from a feeder. So to start with, you're going to want to set this max capacity to 1 on all of these. And then we're just going to feed them whatever we want. Don't feed them seeds when you're trying to tame them. You can feed them seeds later, but especially the babies, they'll eat a seed and they will just get full immediately. And then they won't eat from it for ages, and then you're wasting a load of time trying to tame your Pacu. Feed them small amounts of algae to start. So yeah, don't do that. We'll hook this all up with algae in a minute. But that's very important. So, Let's hook up the conveyors next, because that's relatively easy. We've already started doing a lot of this. So the egg chutes are going to run through the tiles. In the Luma Plays build, the conveyor is located in these sort of tiles down here in the corners, and the auto sweeper was placed so they can reach them. The reason I'm not doing that is because I want to make sure that no matter what, you can fit something else, another room in this build, so the Pacu Ranch isn't taking up any extra space. You see the bottom here is the same as the top here. You can just have normal rooms above and below it. This does mean that if the queue fills up, because it's not getting offloaded, you'll get cramped eggs, but it won't matter. It should never fill up if you do it correctly. So that conveyor rail is going to go over here, and then we're going to wrap it around this end. And it's going to go in here, and we're going to set this to specifically Pacu eggs. We don't want any of the other eggs coming out of here. And then that's going to go in that chute. So the conveyor rail is going to come down here. And then for everything else that isn't getting dropped off in that chute, we're going to drop it off in this chute. So there you go. And then there's a conveyor loader over here. We're just going to feed that around this way. We're going to put a conveyor bridge in here. And then that's going to go over here. And then we can leave it down here. So all of the Pacu variant eggs, the extra polluted dirt, food, etc. is all going to run on this conveyor over here. And then it's going to run this way. And again, we've got a little sensor here. This will detect whether it's an egg that we want to cook. Because this is going to turn off if we have enough eggs on this weight plate. At which point excess eggs will get dumped in here as well. And then they'll get picked up. So the gulpfish eggs specifically, we're going to pick up in here with the shutoff. They're going to go in this receptacle. This receptacle could hold 25 eggs, by the way. If you have a lot of fish breeding, it can fill up. So you will get a lot of omelette production, but a lot of the eggs will come out here as well. But yeah, let's put in all the surfboards as well and the pipes just quickly. There you go. So yeah, that's all the Mechatronics. It's a little bit more complicated than Luma Plays build, but not by too much. And then, again, that algae chute just goes there. So, yeah, that's what it looks like. And again, you can just expand it indefinitely over here. Very quickly, let's set up some power wires. I'm not going to pretend that we have a specific power source in mind for this. We're just going to plug everything in over here. You want to make sure that all of the wires are in places that are generally going to be accessible for your dupes. So bear in mind, wires behind locked doors are going to be harder to access. So make sure to build those before you actually hook up the automation that locks the doors. Otherwise, that could be a little bit annoying. Okay, so we're back. We've powered everything now, so that's all hooked up. And yeah, the next part is going to be the automation. So let's get started on that. So fundamentally, the automation is pretty much the exact same as in the Luma Plays build. But because of the slightly different arrangement of the tanks, so we can actually fit 4 tanks into this space, the wire positions are going to look slightly different. So first of all, these sensors. Because we want 3 fish in here, we're just going to set this to below 3 fish. If there's less than 3 fish in here, this door opens. Now, you might notice, I actually have... You may notice we actually have a mod that now shows us what the settings of all of these buildings are while we're in the automation overlay. Thank you very much whoever recommended that. I wish I knew about this years ago. So that's going to plug in here. But what we're also going to do is we're actually going to hook up a buffer gate. And we can set this to just a normal 5 second. We're going to set up a load of these buffer gates in series. So 1 for each tank. And then similarly, these automation wires are just going to plug into their respective doors. Not too complicated yet. So, we've got these 4 lines up, and what we're going to now do is we're actually going to set these all up to connect to each other independently from the doors. So we're just going to set up this automation wire bridge that's going to go over each of these ports, except for this one at the end, and they're all going to connect together. So once all 4 of these have activated for at least 5 seconds, i.e. all tanks have been full for at least 5 seconds, then the signal will go up here to close this door and prevent any other fish from going further into this area, where they're just going to be flopping around endlessly. And then what we'll do is we'll actually send a little automation wire up here. Again, we'll just use a bridge to go over the sweeper, so you can use this whole room. We're going to come down here. We're going to use a NOT gate. So essentially, when this door is open, this door is closed, and vice versa. So closing this door will open this door. And then any future fish that hatch from where the eggs are being deposited here will flop directly into this pool instead. After the 12 reserve eggs are here, the rest of the eggs are going to get dumped in here anyways via the conveyor that we set up earlier. And this will just mean that those eggs will flop into here if they're not needed over here. So all of the excess Pacu are still going to end up over here. But the rest of the eggs are going to get picked up here by this sweeper. So the last thing to actually do is just hook this up. We're just going to use an AND gate. So if there's less than 12 eggs on this weight plate, and if there is a Pacu detected here, then we're going to run the AND gate and open the chute. Pretty simple, right? So we shouldn't be dumping anything here that isn't a Pacu egg. I don't think you actually need this loader. But yeah, that's actually pretty much all of the automation. And then it's just a matter of actually setting these various loaders. So what we'll do is we'll set this to load everything except for algae. Let's actually just spawn in a little bit of algae, and let's just get someone to dig it out. So you. Thank you for cooperating. So yeah, everything except for algae will get picked up by this. Because the algae is going to get loaded into here manually. Just from wherever it is on the map. Or alternatively, if you just have your puffed ranch with your algae distillers, you can just plug that conveyor from that area directly into this. And we have actually done a video on puffs, so feel free to check out that video if you want to see how to ranch puffs for massive slime production. We've done that on Twitch, got hundreds of tons of slime. You can easily convert that all into algae with the puffs. So yeah, that's that setting here. We're going to set this to algae. We're actually going to set that to priority 9. Set all of these the exact same. So this loader here, we're going to set to everything except for eggs, just in case we dump anything out in this chute. Not that I'm really expected to. You could probably get rid of this loader if you want, but there is room for a loader here, so I put it in just in case. I don't think we're going to need it. So this loader here, critically, so this is going to load standard stuff in. Again, don't put algae in these. Don't put algae in these. But do include eggs on this one, because this loader is only reachable by this sweeper. So only eggs that we want to get moved are going in this loader. And then there's just this room over here. So this is going to be for edibles. So primarily omelettes. And then this little center here, that's going to be set to goldfish. Oh, no, that's going to be set to regular Pacu. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're just going to connect that directly to the shutoff. Again, we only want to store regular Pacu eggs in here. We're going to take out the gulpfish and the tropical fish because we can use them to heat and cool areas respectively. One thing I'm probably not going to mention in future videos that much because it's not super relevant is if you do keep your water warm and you end up with tropical Pacu, first of all, look at this guy with his big chin. Like, what a Chad. I mean, there you go. But if we actually select him, the game knows he's a Chad because he gives a large amount of positive decor. They each give 25 decor over a 5-tile radius. This is the only benefit to the tropical Pacu. Other than heating up areas you want to heat up, but I don't think that's a huge deal. But the gulpfish will cool everything down. So let's just spawn in a... In fact, actually, here's what we'll do. We'll spawn in a gulpfish. We'll spawn in a tropical Pacu, and then you can see for yourself what's going on. So if we look at the temperature overlay, this guy is spawned in at minus 12.5. This guy is spawned in at 55 degree. And then if we spawn in the regular Pacu, he spawns in at a nice 30 degrees. So that is the main relevant thing because they're so large. That's why we're going to separate them out. And again, you can dump them into areas you want to heat and cool respectively. That's what I'd recommend that you do. Just a little bit of passive heating and cooling. So that's why we're setting this up like this. Yeah, that's literally it. So let's actually just move in some wild Pacu and see what happens. Because so what we're going to do is I'm just going to put in, let's say put 4 over here. And then we're just going to put like, I don't know, like another 5 Pacu over here. So they're all going to start flopping. They're all flopping in sequence. That's great. And if we speed it up, you can see they're going to drop into their little respective tanks. We're using a mechanized airlock for this. Looks like we put in a little bit of extra water in here. It's fine. And they're on their way. So because this room has 3 fish in now, fish is sleeping, the numbers are right, and the door is closed. The Pacu, you're not going to have multiple Pacu hatching at the exact same time, apart from a circumstance like this where you're literally spawning them in all at the same time. So bear that in mind. So now we've done that, this door is closed, this door is opened, and all the future Pacu are going to spawn up in there. So now the last thing to do, let's actually just put in a dev pump. In this case, I'm just going to shove it unceremoniously over here. And we're going to hook it up directly down here. And we're going to set this up to be algae. And again, you're going to want to use the algae for the initial fish taming, just to make sure they're eating from the feeders. That's going to go in the conveyor receptacle when I can't eat it. And then the auto sweepers are going to load it into the fish feeder, delivering it 1 kilogram at a time. You do not want duplicates to do this. Once you've actually got this working, like, you can... I mean, we've got the surfboards in here, but you can set these like a low priority so that your duplicates aren't actually accessing these. So you can set them to like 2 priorities, set the conveyor receptacles to 1. But bear in mind, if your dupes don't have any errands to do, they might come down here and grab the algae manually. If one of the rooms is open, that's why we're using the receptacles, because that's actually going to store the algae in here so the duplicates don't keep doing the task manually. If you have any algae just floats around the map, they may occasionally come down here and try and fill these. But you can see the fish are in here. They've all eaten from feeder pretty quickly. Actually, these guys are still looking for food because it's still coming on the conveyor. So, yeah, hopefully we'll get to see what these guys eat. Yeah, there you go. He ate a little bit of food. They're pretty good at actually coming to the feeder these days. They used to be pretty inconsistent about it. Bear in mind as well, if you load the game, it might take like a cycle for them to actually find the feeder and the waterfall, but they will find them after a little bit. It's a bit of a bug, bit of a long-standing bug. So if you're loading and saving the game frequently, maybe you're going to see slightly less breeding out of these Pacu, but it doesn't make a huge difference overall in most runs. But yeah, now they're just eating for it continuously, because 1 kilogram is enough food for about sort of, say, 3 schedule blocks for a Pacu, so they're going to come and feed from there every now and then. If we go on here, you can see they've got the 8 from feeder buff, so minus 20% wildness per cycle. That means the wildness is going to dip down sort of around, I don't know, like just under 7 cycles from when the fish is brought in here. So try and get the Pacu Fry to come in here so that they, once they turn into adults, they can start breeding more or less quickly. But the reality is, when you're on the map, you're basically just going to be looking around for whatever Pacu you've got. And they all spawn in at different ages, so you can't necessarily rely on having a young Pacu. But if the Pacu is older than, say, 18 cycles and it's completely wild, you're not going to actually tame it in time to get the egg production going. So don't bother with them, is what I would say. Yeah, you don't need to automate the tepanizer. That's just going to heat up this water automatically, and then that's going to start cooking the omelets. So. We'll come back in a minute once these guys have actually fully kicked in, because now the duplicates don't actually have to do anything. So, in summary, what we're doing with these eggs over here, the conveyor rail is set up to go in here. It's going to detect regular Pacu eggs. They're going to go into the shutoff. If they're a Pacu egg that gets stored in the conveyor receptacle, you can store up to 25 eggs in here at a time, after which point we're probably going to want it to overflow a little bit so that this doesn't actually block up with Pacu. So we can still get other stuff out. Otherwise, the Pacu eggs are going to build up over here on this conveyor. Might clog things up a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll actually set this up to run this way as well. So it's just going to go into here with the loader. And then this loader is going to take edibles out, and they're going to go this way. So what we've ended up here with... Hold on. Cut this. Why are you trapped now? Why are you not moving? Oh, I didn't drag this one here. Right, okay. Right. So the egg, this is the spare egg. We now have 12 eggs on the plate. So that's the amount of eggs we want to replenish all of the breeder ranches, 3 per tank. The spare egg is going to come in here. It's going to get picked up by the sensor. And then, yeah, that gets picked up. It's going to get put straight in the receptacle. So he's going to stay in here. The viability of the egg is going to decrease by 10% per cycle, so it'll crack after 10 cycles. At which point, we will end up with a load of... What is going on with you guys? So, after 10 cycles, this egg is going to crack. You're going to end up with some raw egg in here. And then if we put the raw egg in here... So we'll make sure this is not set to raw egg. The raw egg is also not going to go in here. So let's make sure that's set to not include raw egg. So this, as you can see, is heating up. It's going to change pretty quickly with the temperizer. This is still actually heating up the water because it's we just spawned some more in. But if we actually set this to, say, 85 degrees, because that's what the temperizer is eventually going to reach, then this is going to heat up a fair bit quicker. And then we can excitedly see what actually happens to the raw egg. Yes, behold, physics! It turns into an omelette. There you go. And then we can put that in here. And then the omelette is going to get shifted out into the world. And then you can just deliver this to your fridge, your freezer, wherever your duplicates want to bring it. And that's all good. I mean, the omelette, it doesn't have the highest food quality in the world, but it is very calorie efficient, and that's kind of why we're doing this in here. You can actually get sort of around 3,000 calories of omelette per Pacu in these tanks. So this setup, you're going to end up with about... You're going to end up with about 36,000 calories of omelette per cycle. That's a lot of food. It's enough food for 36 duplicates. About 3 dupes per Pacu. So this is why you do that. Very easy food source, relatively little input required. Yes, Pacu don't give you as many other benefits as other critters. Like in the Prehistoric Planet Pack, the lums are very resource efficient for their food as well. And they harvest plants for you. But it's a little bit more complicated setting them up. The inputs are a little bit more costly potentially. These guys make it relatively simple, but all you have to do is figure out a good mechanism for holding your eggs in reserve, making sure that you have some Pacu to flop into a tank as needed. That is the key difficulty of setting this up. And then, of course, just arranging your tanks in a space-efficient way. Because what you could do is you could have just one big tank down here, but then each critter only gets +1 happiness from a water fort, and they get -1 happiness from each other critter in the tank. So you could only have, say, 9 or 10 Pacu if you connected all these tanks up together and removed a lot of this automation. But here we can have 12. And it's up to you whether it's worth that much extra automation. It's not any more complicated, it's just repeating it. Perhaps more refined metals for the buildings. You can just have a big tank of them, and then set these to a higher number, and then more fish per tank. It's absolutely fine. But this is a way that we like to do it, and yeah, they're all going to get sorted out. We're going to leave this running for a few cycles, and then we're going to come back to it. In terms of mirroring it, let's just actually very quickly see what it looks like mirrored. So we're going to mirror that, and we're going to come back to it as well. So we're back. You can see that we built the more or less exact same design over here on the left. We've just mirrored it in this case. You will have to actually remove the fire pole here and put an auto sweeper here as well. But generally, everything matches mirrored-wise except for the automation. Like the rages of the auto sweeper are the same, the positions of the loaders are the same, the access ranges are the same. So let's just hook up the automation quickly and see how that differs. It doesn't differ too much. So let's see. First of all, let's actually put in the critter sensors. That would be a good idea, wouldn't it? So again, we're just going to set those to below 3 critters only. And then we're going to have those connect up into the doors. So that's going to go this way this time. And then we're going to set up our buffers so we can route them to this door. So I think what we'll do is I will put them down here. Put them down... You know what? I think there's a neater way of doing this. Let's send the automation from the sensors to the doors this way, because the port on the doors is going to differ. And then what we'll do is we'll take the buffer gates out of here. Yeah, we'll just do this. And then that's all going to hook up. So that is going to go across here. We're going to connect it with bridges to each buffer gate via a bridge again. Then that's just going to go into the door. And then that's just going to go up here again. We're going to bridge it here. And then we're going to come down to a NOT gate into this door. I always like doing these mirrored automation overlays because the fact that you can't actually mirror the ports on the AND gates and things makes a surprising amount of difference to how you actually need to set these up sometimes. But the long and short of it is we need the output port to plug into the chute. We need the input ports to plug in here. So in this case, the AND gate just goes up here. It's not actually that much more complicated. And then, of course, this one plugs in down here. But all the settings are the same. Here is a quick shot of... Hold on. Yeah, there you go. So here's a quick shot of what the automation looks like in both rooms. Excuse all the mess. And you can see it doesn't vary that much. Slightly different positions. So everything still fits in more or less the same area. Nothing major to worry about. So yeah, nothing too much to worry about with this. Everything fits the same way either way. There's no major symmetry differences. The setup over here works exactly the same for the Pacu. So let's just spawn some Pacu in, and we're gonna come back after, I don't know, let's say, no, not the raw egg. We're gonna come back after, let's say, 15 cycles, and then see what all of these guys are up to. So, what you can do, if you don't want your conveyor receptacle to back up at only 25 eggs, you can put a conveyor loader in here, and that will fill up to 250 kilograms of eggs. And again, the automation is the same, except this is not going to be connected to the loader on this end. If this backs up, it's just going to back up on here. But 250 eggs in here, you would have to have 12 breeders at least connected to this to actually get this to overload off of this many Pacu. So yeah, that's what I would suggest. Put a loader in here. The only thing is, you want this loader to be on a higher priority than this loader, so that eggs don't get automatically loaded into this loader. And in this case, this does mean that all of the Pacu in your final breeding chamber are just going to get converted into omelettes, regrettably. That's just the law of nature. But you're probably only doing this if you have a lot of tanks, or if you need all of your food to be omelette. In any case, that will be fine for you to just use this end tank here for just omelette production. That's not actually the end of the world. And we played around with this a fair bit, trying to get this to actually... trying to see if there was a smarter orientation we could do with, say, a storage tile, other things, so that we didn't have to use a conveyor loader. That would require moving the autosweeper into here. In the Luma Plays build, you do actually have the autosweeper in this room, but I like having it in this room just to save a little bit of space, so you can fit more in to your normal sort of base design. But yeah, let's have a look at what's going on with all these eggs then. So what you're going to have to do, to change that is, you're going to have to put the chute in here. The loader has to stay on this tile. So what we will do is, the chute will go here, the rail will just go underneath here, and bridge this way. And that's going to go up here. And then the eggs are going to get loaded into this loader, where it's only going to have the rail here, just on this tile, so that it actually loads. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to send this rail... let's see. We can just send it around here. That's fine. So now let's see what this does. So now the eggs are going this way. They're going to get dumped out of the chute. They're going to go in to the loader. Then this loader shouldn't actually be connected. Disconnect it. Make sure it's disconnected. Yeah, see, there we go. Now conveyor rail blocked. So that should be fine. Our excess eggs should end up in here. You can store up to 250 eggs in here, and then when they crack, again, it will just form the raw egg, it will just drop down here and you can grab it. So that is going to look slightly different. The automation setup will be the exact same as the normal conveyor receptacle one, if you mirror it. It's a little bit more complicated, and it does mean that these guys don't get to contribute to the breeder pool. But if you have a long row, it's not actually going to matter. You could do either setup, and it will be fine. But use the conveyor loader if you want 100% omelette out of your Pacus and no Pacu fillets. And use this one if you want some Pacu fillets and you want all of the... if you have less breeders and you just want them all to contribute to breeding as much as possible. So yeah, we'll come back when we've actually got some more Pacu going on in here. We can see what it's like once it's been running for a little while, because I just filled it with a load of wild fish, and they are eating, they are taming, but it's going to take a little bit of time, so we'll be back in a few minutes. So we're back. We've left it for about 7 cycles just to see what's going on, and everything's working correctly. All the Pacu are tame. They're all laying eggs pretty quickly. Look at that number go burr. They're doing all right. They've dropped some polluted dirt down here. We can set the sweepers to pick that up as well. That's not a problem. It's just because we turned algae off on the sweepers. So we'll just get that all picked up. Both setups are working fine. This one's picked up quite a few eggs already. We've actually got 29 eggs in here. That's a lot of eggs. They've all got pretty hot, obviously, but if we look at them, the viability is decreasing pretty regularly. So they're going to crack fairly soon, and then they're all going to get loaded into this loader, and that's going to be absolutely fine as omelette. We have ended up with a gulp fry egg already. The odds are not super high, but if we look at these fish, so these fish are 25 degrees, the 96% chance of laying Pacu eggs, but you do generally end up with sort of about a 2% chance of getting the other eggs when all is said and done. And so yeah, you should... if you have enough Pacu, you should end up with at least one viable variant egg that you can then send to a separate setup if you want to generate heat and decor with tropical Pacu, or if you want to generate cooling or filter water with gobfish. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm pretty happy with this Pacu setup. It's a variant of the Luma Play's pressure plate build design. The automation is not too challenging. You just got to make sure that you've got the buffer gates all hooked up together so that when all of the ranches are full, the doors swap around and the breeder Pacu flop into here instead of flopping all the way over here. And you don't overload the tanks with the doors. But yeah, the automation's pretty straightforward. It doesn't actually change that much when you mirror it either. The main thing is just setting all of the loader permissions correctly. And bear in mind, if you're using a conveyor loader at the end here, the eggs from here are going to go directly into here to get turned into omelette, rather than going back into this setup for the end ranch only. But yeah, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. Do you like Pacu? Do you use them in your base game runs these days? I haven't really favored them actually too much in the game, because usually we're spending our frames on breeding critters that are going to do something other than make food and lime from eggshells. But in terms of actually just getting food, like per kilogram of input food going in, you're going to struggle to find anything more efficient and less duplicate intensive than Pacu. And there have been some changes over the years, but now I think they're in a pretty good state. It used to be that these guys would actually not even be miserable. They would actually just be unhappy, and thus they would actually self-sustain with 1 egg each when they're hovering on this tile. And so with just 1 breeder ranch, or even just 1 breeder Pacu, you could literally end up with infinite Pacu in here, given enough time. I'm glad they changed that, because that was slightly too strong. Kind of made doing other food sources pretty irrelevant. Not that critters are only useful for food, but it was very strong, and that was when we were talking about it in the critters tier list. We will do an update to the critters tier list video at some point. Don't worry about it, we will. And we'll include all the DLC critters too. But yeah, we're streaming on Twitch at the moment. We're back to a base game run. We have the DLC content enabled. We have Pacu breeding on that run. We're going to try a few different things with them there as well. So feel free to check in on weekday evenings on Twitch. I'll be around later this week. But yeah, from ONI fish to real fish, Whiskers, take us away. Bye for now. I forgot to get some footage of the duplicates surfing, so here you go. Here you go, they're actually surfing. They're all enjoying it. They're all enjoying overloading the wire. It's all good. But yes, take care, everyone. Bye for now.
Whiskers sends thanks to the following Twitch subscribers and YouTube members: 999999999, Ayla Ivo, El Cotto, FRD. Lagbot 30,000, Neo Deus Machina, Quantum Zari, Stinger's Playground, Sweet Danger Kitty, Uglavisk, User 4101, and Christian Nielsen 9363.